Hey everyone, how are you? I told you I'd get back with you about my journey in getting rid of or getting off of insulin. If you remember, I was mentioning a story about my doctor's PA who gave me the thought of getting off of insulin, not being on a pump like the doctor told me I was going to be on, or taking a large amount of insulin. It's interesting because the doctor was so sure about that I needed to be on this pump to control it because I wasn't getting my blood sugar. It was over 500 and it wasn't coming down. And that was a problem. It was a problem. In fact, he prescribed to me just about the highest amount of insulin a person could take, as well as 8 glucophage pills per day. This was just way too much. I just looked at the side effects of glucophage or metformin, as well as insulin, and I just felt like I was too young. This is some over 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago I'm talking about, and I felt like it was a problem. I just couldn't do that. It was unacceptable to me. Well, one day while in his office, his PA comes to me and she closes the door. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? Where's the doctor at? She mentions that she herself at one time was on a lot of insulin and wanted to get off of insulin. And she was going to explain to me what I needed to do to see if I truly needed all of that insulin or an insulin pump or what. And I'm going to explain that to you now, what she told me. And it worked for me. It totally worked for me. But I want to add, too, that this is just me. This is my experience. It might be different than what you get. It might be different than other people. But it's what happened and what worked for me. So I'm not a doctor, and I don't have a great education in regard to this type of thing. Just of what I've researched for myself. I've watched YouTube videos and other things and done and tried to back that research up that I heard with what I could look up. So anyway, she came in and told me that I could control my diabetes by my diet. And I mean, that just blew my mind. It was like those commercials where the head blows. It was just, wow, really? I don't have to depend on medication? You have to explain it to me. And so she did. She said, well, let's go ahead and start experimenting. She said, first of all, stop eating all carbs, everything. No rice, no potatoes, no bread, no chips, no soda. Stop eating all of those and only eat salads and broiled or grilled or baked meats. And at the time, I was eating all the meats except pork. So she told me to just stop those and only use either my grill. I had a grill outside, gas and charcoal grill. And then I also invested in the 2 sizes of the George Foreman grill. So I had that big one, and then I had a smaller one. And what I would do is record 3 times a day when I would take my blood sugar and what I'd eaten to affect that. Now, of course, you don't take your blood sugar right after you eat necessarily. I waited about 30 minutes to an hour before I took my blood sugar to get a good reading on it. But that's what I did. I bought a graph book, and I wrote in that graph book some topics, titles, like the time. It looked a little bit like this, like the time that I would eat and take my blood sugar, also how much insulin I took, the pills I would take, the meat that I ate, the salad, what was in the salad that I would eat, also how many carbs and calories that I was eating. So here's what it would look like on the page. Hopefully you can see that. So I just wrote those things down, and and would keep track of those. Like, again, I said 3 times a day. She wanted me to record these 3 times so that I would be able to see throughout the day what was affecting me and how. And I could see if my blood sugar would change, what was I eating, and why was it changing. And if it didn't change, then I'd know to keep doing that thing. So progressively, every 3 to 5 days, I would lower the amount of insulin I was taking in my injection. At the time, I think he was giving me about the highest amount that you could take with the needle. So that's what I would do. I would have my salads. Oh, and also with the salads, she said I could add like tomatoes and peppers, mushrooms, different things, like any of those types of things. Anything that would grow, plant life would not hurt at all. And any sweet fruits to stay away from at the time. So stay away from those. Later on, I would add those. In fact, years later, I would find out through research that it really wasn't the sweet fruits that affect your blood sugar negatively. That it's really the amount of fats in your diet that cause the sugars to affect your blood sugar numbers. But that's a whole nother video. But anyway, going back to what I'm talking about now. So again, I bought the graph paper. I put columns in it to tell me the time, to tell me how much insulin I was taking, how many pills I was taking, what meat I was eating, as well as how much of that meat and how I cooked it. The salad, how much salad I was having. I just measured it by a bowl. I had a certain bowl that I would use, one of those metal bowls, and I would just say I had a bowl of salad with a cup of mushrooms and 2 cups of tomatoes, avocado, but you have to be very careful with avocado because the fat level can be very high, which can also affect your blood sugar negatively. And as well as the effect that it might have had on me and the calories and the carbohydrates that I was eating. So that's how I divided it up on the page. Again, if they did not affect my insulin, when I dropped it, then I would eat for about 3, 4, 5 days that way, having just taken that much insulin. If my numbers were about the same, I would drop down a little bit lower on the amount of insulin that I took. And I found that it was not changing. And basically, and now I understand a little bit more, it was because of me getting rid of all of those carbs that would negatively affect my blood sugar. I found that out later in research. But anyway, it was working wonderfully. In fact, it worked so well that I was able to get off of the insulin. I didn't need the insulin. I didn't need the insulin. I was taking so little insulin that I was able to, with just a little more control of my diet, after I learned the things that was working, that I didn't even have to use the insulin anymore. But right before that point, she told me to begin adding carbs back into my diet. So I began to add certain things to experiment. Well, what made my blood sugar go up and what allowed it to stay at the same or even lower? That's how I was able to figure out that, for example, russet potatoes affect my blood sugar tremendously, makes it spike. But red potatoes don't seem to affect me like that. Really weird. I added rice back in, but one of my roommates' mother, wonderful, wonderful, amazing cook, Latina, cooks for her whole family all the time, and a beautiful system for making rice. Just something simple like that was affecting my blood sugar. The way she did it, it did not. Here's what she did. If I was going to make a cup of rice, I'd measure it out, pour it in a saucepan. Then, perhaps like a medium-sized saucepan, then I would let water run into it in the sink, but not so hard that, or not so much of a flow that it makes the rice run out, but just slow enough. Cold water, and you'll realize that the rice will make the water a little foggy or white cloudy. Well, that's the starch in the rice. And you just let that come out of the pan, and so until your water is basically not cloudy anymore. Now you've gotten most of the starch out. And again, use cold water because the hot water would be cooking your rice, which will mess up the whole way your rice comes out. So then after that, then you pour enough water off so that if you have a thin layer of rice, your cup, and then you have about an inch or less of water, or half inch of water, not an inch, a half inch of water above it. You then put that on the stove and turn up the heat until it begins to boil. As soon as it starts to boil, you turn the heat down to simmer as low as you can get the gas or the electric, as low as you can get it, and then you put a cover over it but tilt it on the side so that some of the heat escapes, so it doesn't like make bubbles and boil out of your pan, right? So that whole process from when you put it on the stove and turn the heat on to when it's done should take 15 minutes flat. And in fact, you'll notice that all of the water would be absorbed by your rice, and the rice would even start to get like almost like holes, like somebody was poking their finger into your rice, and you'd know it was done. You could take the top off and stir it up with your spoon, and it'd be done. But it would have so much less of those of that starch. And that starch really will spike your blood sugar. So you really don't want that. But you can do that, cook it this way, and still be able to add rice back into your diet if it works for you. It worked for me, but it may not work for you. So you would have to experiment with it, like she mentioned to me. So every person is different. From this, I was able to get a list of things that would be good in my diet, that I could eat without it adversely affecting my blood sugar. And like I mentioned to you, I was able to get off of the insulin. In fact, I was able to get off of all of that, taking that glucophage and metformin at the time. And now today, so over 20 years later, I'm only taking 2 pills, right, to control my blood sugar. And and with that, my A1C is down to 5.5. It has been, and at that time that I was talking about, those over 20 years ago, it was at 11 or 12 or more than that, because the test came back and it wouldn't register on the test that they were using then. So I know it was way over 11 or 12. And that was really what panicked the doctor. And I could see why he would say, I need to put you on a pump because we can't get your blood sugar down. But it was able to come down. Now, even though with diabetes, and I was able to do all of those different things, diabetes is a degenerative disease. It never, even though you learn to control it better, it never goes away. You just learn to control it or to slow down the degeneration a little bit. With some people, the degeneration is a little bit faster. And with others, it's not as fast. So I know even with my brother had diabetes, and he didn't really take care of himself as well as he should. He wound up having total liver and kidney failure. He actually had to get a heart, and once he got a heart, he only lived for about a year after that or so, and at 55, he died. You know, so I'm 50 now, you know, and I want to live longer than that. My wife and I, actually, she's been to 10 more countries and islands than I have, but I've had the privilege to go to over 25 lands, countries, and islands. So just remember that you can take control of your life. You don't have to let diabetes or any condition or disease control you. It's in our minds of what we can do. Sometimes people can't do, physically we can't do everything that we want to, but our minds, we can control that. Let our minds take us where we want to go. Work on being a good person and helping people. Listen to their experiences. You can learn so much from a diverse amount of people. Make it your goal to just better your life, better yourself, your insides. Read a book, watch a video, a documentary. There's a lot of nice things out there. Learn about another person's culture. Develop a new friendship. Perhaps if you have to go to the hospital for treatments or anything like that, talk to someone. Talk to the nurse. Find out about her life, what she does. Talk to the person next to you. But really just enjoy life. Enjoy life. Our bodies, we were made to enjoy it, not to have it shortened. And for other reasons, yeah, we have to deal with different sicknesses and ailments at this time. But try to make the best of it. So anyway, and I might say, I really feel, not in a negative way, but I feel in a positive way, I feel for you ones out there who are dealing with diabetes. Some of you have to be on pumps, and some have diabetes type 1 from young. A guy I work with, one of my supervisors, his son was diagnosed with diabetes at 14 years old. Man. But these ones have learned how to deal with it and how to do things and to still live rich lives. And yes, you and I, we can live rich lives if we just really try to take control, use our minds, don't let it overwhelm us, expand what we know, our minds, by talking to people and just getting to be friends with them. All right, so next time, I'll tell you how I was able to lose 100 pounds in just 12 months. All right, so this is Verone signing off, and we'll see you next time.